The government says it'll complete its medical sector reform successfully, following a court ruling that rejected an application by the medical circle asking to stop the medical school quota expansion plan. Doctor resistance continues. The job market showed recovery in April, with more than 200,000 jobs added on the back of stronger exports and manufacturing. North Korea fired multiple ballistic missiles towards the East Sea this afternoon. The latest launch follows on the heels of a meeting between Russia's Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping over in Beijing. It's May 17, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jongmyo. The government's healthcare reform looks to be picking up pace following a court ruling that rejected an application submitted by the medical circle. Doctor resistance continues over the medical school quota expansion. Chunhyang starts us off.
The Seoul High Court on Thursday rejected an application submitted by medical students, exam candidates, professors and trainee doctors to halt the government's plan to expand the number of new medical students by 2,000 starting in 2025. The South Korean government stated on Friday that it respects the court's decision and will complete healthcare reform successfully.
The government deeply appreciates the court's wise judgment. The government will engage more actively in dialogue with the medical community and focus all our efforts on strengthening the emergency medical system to minimize the impact on patients.
The court ruled that medical school professors, trainee doctors, and exam candidates are not parties involved in the lawsuit and dismissed their claims. Regarding medical students, while they are considered as a party, the court rejected their claims due to concerns of the significant implications on public welfare. Regardless of the government winning the second trial, trainee doctors announced on Thursday that they would not return to their post, and the medical community will also appeal to set up a third trial. However, it seems that this won't take place until at least mid-June, while the official admission guides for each university will be finalized by this month. During the prolonged dispute, the medical community has filed over 20 lawsuits to the court, but all applications were rejected in the first instance. The medical community argues that the meeting to discuss the quota was too brief, lasting just an hour, and was nothing more than a formal act to confirm the number brought by the government. On April 30th, the Seoul High Court requested specific evidence from the government regarding the increase of 2,000 to the med school quota within the appeal filed by the medical community. Last week, the government submitted approximately 50 items of documented evidence, including research reports and meeting records. This court's decision on Thursday is pivotal, as now the government can enter the final stages of its medical reform plan. Chunhyang, Arirang News.
On the labor front, the job market showed recovery in April, with more than 200,000 jobs added on the back of stronger exports and manufacturing. Our Moon Hidden covers the rebound and more.
South Korea's job market showed recovery on the back of rising exports in April. According to Statistics Korea on Friday, there were 28.69 million people in employment last month, a rise of some 261,000 compared to the same month last year. The rate of employment for people aged 15 years old and above rose by 0.3% on year to 63%, which is the highest figure for any month of April since data was first compiled in 1982. The job market has seen fluctuations over the past few months, posting over 300,000 more people in employment on year in January and February, before a smaller increase of 173,000 in March. The agency attributed this to a rise in employment in manufacturing as exports have been booming due to an upturn in the semiconductor industry. The manufacturing sector hired 100,000 more people in April on year, and this is the biggest increase seen since November 2022. Other sectors that also saw an upswing in employment were the healthcare and telecommunications industries. On the other hand, the retail sector has been seeing a decline in employment for some time now, and a spokesperson from Statistics Korea explained why.
Wholesale and retail industries are becoming automated, and with the boom in online transactions, employment in wholesale and retail has been continuously decreasing.
With South Korea's aging population, employment among those aged over 60 years old has continued to increase. 292,000 more people aged 60 and over were in employment in April this year compared to the same month last year. For those in their late 20s, the employment rate rose on year as it has been doing for the past 3 years to reach an all-time high for any month of April at 72.7%. During a meeting headed by the first Vice Minister of the Ministry of Economy and Finance on the same day to discuss the latest figures, the government pledged to support the creation of high-quality jobs in the private sector and develop job support initiatives for vulnerable groups. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Korea's inflation appears to be slowing and its domestic demand growing. Now, that's according to the latest government report on the local economy. Or Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korea's economy sees some positive signs as domestic demand grows and inflation slows. That's according to the latest Economic Green Book, a monthly economic assessment report released by the Finance Ministry on Friday. The ministry's description of the country's economy in this month's report included signs of recovery in domestic demand. Compared to the previous reports, pace of economic recovery differs across sectors. And this is mainly due to the rise in spending and construction investment.
The two parts to domestic demand are spending and investment. While the economy continues on its recovery momentum overall, the recovery in domestic demand is gaining traction.
In March, retail sales, an indicator of consumer spending, rose 1.6% compared to the previous month, with non-durable goods and durable goods both going up. Construction investment in the first quarter this year also rose 2.7% compared to the previous quarter, according to preliminary data from the Bank of Korea. This comes as inflation shows signs of cooling, with the Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, falling below 3% in April after consumer prices saw on-year increases of 3.1% in February and March. While prices of agricultural goods, livestock, and fishery products were up 10.6% compared to the previous year, the increase was at a slower pace compared to the month before, when prices rose nearly 12% on year. And core inflation, which represents a long-term trend in the level of prices by excluding volatile food and energy prices, was also up 2.3% on year compared to 2.4% in March. Exports in April were also up 13.8% compared to the previous year, driven by an increase in demand overseas for IT products such as semiconductors as well as automobiles. April saw a rise in exports for the 7th straight month. But overall industrial production in March fell 2.1% compared to the previous month, as production in mining and manufacturing, construction, and services all fell. And in the same month, investment in equipment dropped 6.6% on month. The ministry vowed to focus its policies on continuing the downward trend in consumer prices while also implementing measures aimed at improving people's livelihoods and managing potential risks. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has again emphasized the need to tackle the nation's low birth rate, saying the government needs to thoroughly review the structure of financial projects and improve the delivery and execution methods. Yoon's remarks came as he presided over a national fiscal strategy meeting on Friday in Sejong with ministers and top officials of the ruling People Power Party. Looking back to his past 2 years in office, he also said the decision to go with sound fiscal policy was a good one, citing some positive upward trends in various global economic indicators, but emphasized that it doesn't mean cutting spending, rather spending efficiently. North Korea has yet again fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea. The provocation comes a day after the leaders of Russia and China voiced opposition to Washington's, quote, act of military intimidation with its allies. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
A fresh round of missile provocations from the north. The regime appears to have launched multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea from the easternmost city of Wonsan. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected the launch at around 3:10 p.m. Friday and estimated that the missiles traveled around 300 kilometers. The launch comes more than 3 weeks after the North conducted firing drills involving 600mm super-large multiple rocket launchers. It also comes a day after the leaders of Russia and China met in Beijing for a summit, where they issued a joint statement opposing Washington and its allies' quote, acts of military intimidation against the regime. Yet on the same day, South Korea and the U.S. conducted joint air drills involving the world's most advanced F-22 stealth fighter jets from the U.S. The military said it immediately captured, tracked, and monitored the missile launches and shared related information with the U.S. and Japan. The JCS strongly condemned the launch, calling it a provocation that seriously threatens peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. It added that it is closely looking into North Korea's provocations under a solid ROK-US joint defense posture. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The powerful sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has denied allegations that the regime is selling arms to Russia as a false rumor. In a statement carried by the regime's Korean Central News Agency on Friday, Kim Yo-jong called the claims of arms exchanges between Pyongyang and Moscow the most observed paradox. She added that tactical weapons recently unveiled by the North were not meant for export, but rather for defense against South Korea. The statement comes as the U.S. State Department on Thursday said that Russia has already used upwards of 40 North Korea-produced ballistic missiles against Ukraine. On the second leg of his two-day state visit to China, Russian President Vladimir Putin is now in Harbin, a place that was once called Little Moscow. Our Kim Bo-kyung has more on what this visit means.
One-stop Little Moscow, Harbin is the capital of Heilongjiang province, which has strong links to Russia, having been home to many Russian expatriates. President Vladimir Putin landed in Harbin on Friday on the second leg of a two-day state visit to China. After he paid tribute at a memorial for soldiers who died in battles for the liberation of Chinese territory from Japan during World War II, he attended several trade and bilateral cooperation forums, including the 8th China-Russia Expo and the 4th China-Russia Forum on Interregional Cooperation in the city. In these, Putin emphasized that the two countries' energy alliance will grow even stronger, underlining that the alliance acts as a guarantor of energy security.
The inseparable Russian-Chinese partnership is a direct influence on the development of the two countries' economies and will reliably provide energy security, stimulate the creation of new industries and well-paid employment, and improve the welfare and quality of life in our countries for our people.
His schedule in Harbin also included a visit to Harbin Institute of Technology, one of China's top science and engineering universities. Called China's Cradle of Engineers, it was sanctioned by the U.S. in 2020 and added to Washington's blacklist amid the U.S.-China technology war. Putin's visit to Harbin comes the day after Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping held several meetings in Beijing on Thursday. While celebrating the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between their countries, the two leaders issued a joint statement on deepening China and Russia's comprehensive strategic partnership.
We jointly signed and issued a joint statement by China and Russia on deepening our comprehensive strategic partnership in the new era on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations.
While expressing their opposition to military intimidation by the U.S. and its allies toward North Korea, they also shared views on other issues, including Ukraine, with Putin saying he would inform the Chinese leader in detail about the situation in Ukraine. Meanwhile, regarding the Putin-Xi summit, the U.S. criticized China's stance, saying Beijing cannot have its cake and eat it too when it comes to its relationship with Russia, while brushing off their reaffirmation of ties. 김보경, Arirang News.
Upgrading the concept of cultural heritage to national heritage. President Yoon on Friday celebrated the launch of the Korea Heritage Service, rebranded from the Cultural Heritage Administration. In his commemorative address on Friday, the president said the management of cultural property going forward will be future-oriented, with active efforts to excavate, preserve, and inherit national heritage. He added he would expand the scope of national heritage, particularly when it comes to intangible assets, to encompass the unique aspects of life, including traditional customs, folklore, festivals, and nature. Yoon further promised to make South Korea a global cultural hub by sharing its heritage with the world. And to celebrate the opening of the Korea Heritage Service, a special exhibit is being offered at Jongmyo Shrine honoring the royal ancestors of the Joseon dynasty using Lego pieces. Our Lee Si-hoo takes us there.
Over 20,000 pieces of Lego come together to create a special build, the layout of the Jongmyo royal ancestral ritual. In this 21st century representation of one of the most significant state ceremonies from the Joseon dynasty by artist Colin Jin, hundreds of officiants, musicians, and dancers, presided by the king, perform a special ritual to honor the royal ancestors. The work is on display at a special exhibit at the Jongmyo Shrine located in central Seoul.
Starting today, the Cultural Heritage Administration has been transformed into the Korea Heritage Service. To celebrate its launch, we have prepared an exhibition hall where visitors can learn about traditional Jongmyo rituals and music, which are both recognized as world heritages, both tangible and intangible.
Jongmyo is where the kings of the Joseon dynasty performed sacrificial rites and enshrined the royal ancestral tablets of deceased kings and queens. They believed the spirits of the ancestors would enter and leave the tablets, blessing the descendants performing the rituals. Both the shrine and the rituals performed at the site are recognized as cultural heritages by the South Korean government and UNESCO. And now, for the first time ever, visitors can take a step into the pilotis-like building called Mangmyoru that housed the management office of the shrine back in history.
From here, the kings of Joseon would wait, thinking of their ancestors until the Jongmyo ritual began. During the wait, they often wrote poetry in peace.
From the king's seat, a magnificent view of the pond landscape to represent the land and the sky.
And it's really beautiful to see. I just entered the ritual, how they did the ritual. So it's very I learned quite a lot, and I feel that the Korean culture is very beautiful, and I feel that the history is just really amazing.
Mangmyoru will remain open to the public until the end of June, offering a peek into the royal history dating back over 600 years. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Now to a beauty contest like no other. The Chunhyang Traditional Beauty Pageant judges contestants on the traditional Korean values found in the story of Chunhyang. But this year, it has also opened the door to international contestants. Our Yoon went to Namwon City to find out more.
Every year, Namwon City in Jeonbuk State hosts the Chunhyang Traditional Beauty Pageant, and the 94th Miss Chunhyang was selected this year. The pageant is inspired by the beautiful love story of Chunhyangjeon, or the tale of Chunhyang, one of the country's most cherished folk tales, which started here in Gwangalluan Garden in Namwon. Chunhyang and Mangmyoru's love first blossomed here in Gwangalluan Garden. The South Korean Romeo and Juliet with a happy ending, Chunhyangjeon, has since been made into more than 100 versions, but the classic love story of Chunhyang and Mangmyoru never changes. And it all started here when Mangmyoru fell in love at first sight when he saw Chunhyang on the swing. So what is the beauty of Chunhyang that is still celebrated today? The contestants try to show qualities encapsulated in the term Chunhyangdaung in Korean, which demonstrates a blend of physical beauty, cultural understanding, intelligence, and moral integrity. The National Chunhyang Contest made a significant shift from this year, transforming into a global Chunhyang Beauty Pageant, opening the door for non-Korean citizens. This year, 5 of the 32 finalists flew into Korea from China, Japan, Indonesia, Vietnam, and North America, and 2 of those finalists were non-Korean citizens.
The Korean wave, or Hallyu, holds considerable influence worldwide. So we thought, instead of sticking to tradition, why not create an event where young people from across the globe can all join?
The evaluation is relatively rigorous, taking into account demeanor and manners that reflect Korea's traditional values. Participants wear the traditional Korean clothing called hanbok during the contest, demonstrating traditional Korean beauty.
First of all, it is a fantastic experience for me to see the many contestants from all over the world. So it is important for me to see the people who understand Korean culture and language. And
to accommodate international participants, a new Global Muse Award is introduced, in addition to the existing Chunhyang titles of Jin, Son, Mi, Chong, Suk, and Hyun. For 10 days, all the finalists stayed together to practice for the contest, covering a range of talents from self-introductions to showcasing their dance skills.
I've never learned how to dance before, so it was a completely new experience, and that in itself was really challenging, but it's been a really enjoyable time.
Following the multiple rounds of evaluation, the ultimate decision is made during the final stage of assessment. Participants give their best on stage for the crown of Jin, which represents the highest honor among the 6 titles of Chunhyang. The title of Jin was claimed by Kim Jong-yoon, who is a student at Ewha Women's University.
First of all, I'm deeply honored to be chosen as the very first global Miss Chunhyang. Additionally, I was selected as Jin, wearing the heaviest crown, and I will take on the responsibility to widely promote the beauty of Namwon.
And the Global Muse Award went to Michelle Sebom-woo from the United States and Oh Sua, an overseas Korean from Indonesia.
I feel like now that the Chunhyang Festival has become a global event, it really indicates how much Korean culture is spreading, and I'm so incredibly honored to become a part of that.
I have learned so much things from here, so much things about Korean culture, about Namwon, about Chunhyang.
This year's winners will also serve as Namwon City's ambassadors for the next 3 years, taking the lead in promoting local culture, festivals, and the advance of Chunhyang values on a global scale. The pageant is not just a celebration of beauty, but also a tribute to the timeless tale of Chunhyang's love and resilience. May the spirit of Chunhyang's enduring love continue to inspire us. 이은희, Arirang News, Namwon.
It's easy to catch a cold due to large daily temperature difference. It was chilly this morning, but the spring sun was strong and temperatures rose during the day. Temperatures will rise further over the weekend. On Sunday, Seoul will rise to 28 degrees Celsius, and it will be above 25 in most regions, feeling as hot as early summer during the day. The daily temperature difference will continue to widen. Later today and tomorrow, strong winds of about 20 meters per second will hit the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do and northeastern Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. High waves, which are high enough to cross breakwaters, are expected on the east coast. Please take extra precautions. Daejeon and Daegu will start off at 13 degrees. Highs will move up to 28 in Gwangju, Gyeongju 30 degrees. For the time being, it will be generally sunny with early summer-like weather temperatures. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's Newscenter for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session coming up.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
입니다. 후 스탠바이. 후 스타트.
어디였지? 뭐가? 분명 챙겨뒀는데?
뭘 챙겨줬어? 무슨 일?
아니 스페셜 티켓이 없어졌어요. 이제 곧 출발해야 되는데.
뭐? 이거 잘 찾아봐.
없어요. 깜짝 선물 멤버들 것도 준비해놨는데 어떡하지?
어떡하지?
같이 찾아보자. 어디로 가는 티켓인데? 목적지는 아직 몰라. 심플리캡하고 폰토에 가지고 가면 어디든 데려준다고 하셨거든.
진짜요? 이 말 들으니까 지금 당장 떠나고 싶다.
맞아요. 요즘 매일 똑같은 일상이라 리프레시 할 만한 게 필요했는데 너무 아쉬워요.
잠깐만. 근데 우리 그 티켓 없어도 갈 수 있을 것 같은데?
어떻게?
우리한텐 나우어데이즈 전용 티켓이 있잖아.
맞네.
우리 그럼 다 같이 전용 티켓 사용해볼까? 떠난 트래블에 목적지에 ven 티켓 가래. 내 심장을 따라 일상과 far away 꽉
멋진 두 손엔 ticket, ticket, ticket. Oh yes. We fly.
어우, 이 티켓이면 저희뿐만 아니라 팬분들도 같이 떠날 수 있을 것 같은데요?
그러니까 좋아. 그럼 다들 준비됐지?
네.
Then this week's Simply Control Don't Miss Out. 그 티켓 어디 있는데?
형한테 있는 거 아니에요?
없어도 된다니까.
Thanks for tuning in to Within the Frame. I'm Han-dan in Seoul. The bromance between two old friends, Vladimir Putin of Russia and Xi Jinping of China, was on full display as Putin visited China in his first overseas trip since his re-election. Celebrating the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations forged between the former Soviet Union and China, the two leaders reaffirmed their no-limits partnership that has grown deeper as they face deepening tensions with the West. Slamming the U.S. and its Western allies for destabilizing security in the Asia-Pacific region, they urged them to stop military provocations against North Korea. For an expert analysis of the Putin-Xi summit and its regional implications, Lee Jung, Associate Professor of International Studies at Gwangju National University, joins us virtually. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good evening.
For another perspective, Evans Revere, non-resident senior fellow at the Brookings Institution's Foreign Policy Program, also joins us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
All right, let's kick things off with you, Professor Lim. President Xi gave Putin a warm welcome, calling him an old friend, while Putin called Russia-China ties a stabilizing force in a chaotic world. What's your overall assessment of Putin's visit to China so far?
Well, first of all, of course, it is interesting, of course, to see that President Putin, ever since his the fifth term started earlier this month, he chose China as his first foreign trip. So it indicates, of course, many political meanings and even economic meanings too. Through the joint statement, they already emphasize their further military cooperation, but not only just militarily. Ever since, especially the war in Ukraine started, which of course started by the Russia's invasion to Ukraine more than 2 years ago from now. But ever since then, of course, the Western sanction has been strengthened further. And having had those kind of pretty tough sanctions against Russia's economic ties with China-like country has been deepened and deepened. So in some Western, of course, among some Western experts, some voices like this, again, Russia became a more kind of junior partner of the China. So if you whether or not you agree with that specific, again, description, again, those kind of description or explanation indicates that, again, Russia is pretty much economically dependent now on China. So they definitely do have common interest at this moment, and they are trying to, again, the blame, of course, the West, represented by the United States, as the one who caused all the situations. Of course, I personally don't agree with that kind of, again, idea. But certainly it looks like they make an alignment, which is more like an anti-West, anti-America.
It's perhaps not so surprising Putin has chosen China as his first foreign trip since his re-election, as he now needs China's help more than ever, as you pointed out. And he certainly sees the opportunity to boast strong ties with China and their united front against the West. Dr. Revere, as widely expected, Putin and Xi criticized U.S. foreign policy at length, voicing concerns over the U.S.-formed alliances such as the AUKUS, which they called a Cold War mentality. How do you see the U.S.-led grouping of like-minded nations and China and Russia's stronger unity against it?
Well, at the outset, I think it's important to note that the statement by Putin and Xi was not just aimed at the United States. They also made clear that a core goal of their so-called no-limits partnership is to replace the liberal democratic international order with one that's led by China and Russia. So the Xi-Putin summit, I think, is an important wake-up call to the world about Chinese and Russian intentions. The fact that Putin and Xi spent so many words attacking U.S.-led alliances and partnerships and also attacking the efforts of the world's democracies to defend themselves and their values, I think that tells us something important about how concerned the Chinese and Russian leaders are about the ability of these partnerships to push back against what Moscow and Beijing are doing. In Europe, the NATO alliance has mobilized to help defend Ukraine, and in doing so, it's sending a very powerful message to Russia that Russian aggression against a sovereign country will not stand. Meanwhile, in the Indo-Pacific region, China's military buildup, its bullying of its neighbors, the threatening posture it's taking towards Taiwan, its support for North Korea, and its aggressive pursuit of territorial claims in the region has sparked an unprecedented mobilization of regional actors in the international community who are all concerned about what Beijing is doing. And the result, as you suggested, has been the establishment of the Quad and AUKUS, greatly strengthened alliance ties between the United States and Korea, the United States and Japan, and of course, this unprecedented cooperation we're seeing among the United States, Japan, and Korea. We've seen now U.S.-Japan-Philippine military exercises and cooperation, new U.S. missile and mobile ground force deployments in the region, and much more. So the Europe region and the Indo-Pacific region are organizing themselves as never before to deal with the challenges posed by China and Russia and other partners. This is good news for liberal democracies. It's not good news for China, Russia, and North Korea.
And Dr. Revere, some point out that President Xi toned down his level of criticism toward the U.S. and perhaps also to other like-minded nations that share democratic values as he seeks to manage deepening tensions with Washington and other European countries as well, and enhance China's perceived legitimacy on the global stage. And when asked about this, State Department spokesman Vedant Patel said that China can't have its cake and eat it too. What's your take?
To speak very frankly, there's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy in China's stated desire to seek improved relations with Europe and to maintain its position in Europe's markets on the one hand, while at the same time China is supporting Russia's war against a sovereign country, Ukraine. Meanwhile, China is standing by as Russia hints at expanding the conflict with Ukraine to include attacks on NATO members, and has even hinted at the use of nuclear weapons. Europe feels greatly threatened by Russia, and Europeans are deeply troubled by China's support for Russia. There's also, I think, tremendous hypocrisy in Beijing's criticism of U.S.-led alliances in Asia, particularly the U.S.-South Korea alliance, while the PRC remains a devoted treaty ally of North Korea. And North Korea, of course, poses an existential threat to South Korea and also to Japan. And China is providing substantial material and political support for Pyongyang and is violating UN Security Council sanctions as it aids North Korea. And Beijing is also looking the other way as Pyongyang expands its nuclear and missile arsenals. And that is, of course, contributing to rising tensions on the Korean Peninsula and in the area. Meanwhile, the Chinese profess to want to try to stabilize and improve relations with the United States while all this is going on. So it's no surprise that the United States' response to all of this is a very blunt message to Beijing. You can't have it both ways.
So a great deal of hypocrisy on China's end. And it seems like while Putin boasts his close friendship with Xi, the Chinese leader has his reasons to worry. And it appears Xi Jinping is mulling how far China should go to help an old friend. And Professor Lim, on the war in Ukraine, President Xi said that there should be a political solution to the war and that China will continue to play a constructive role, but offered no new proposals. How do you assess China's stand on the Russia's war against Ukraine?
Well, let me first mention about the fundamental nature, conflictual nature between Russia and China. Of course, they, in the era of Cold War, of course, they share the same ideology, which is, again, the communism. They backed up each other even today, as long as, again, the Russia is confronting with the West and the United States. Of course, China probably cannot probably advocate the West voices, which might be somewhat understandable, but at the same time, but China and Russia, these two big giant-size superpowers who have nuke, they can't be at the same team ultimately. I don't think so. So that is why even throughout the decades in the era of Cold War, so-called Sino, again, the Soviet rivalry, competition, or even conflict we have witnessed several times or many times. So for now, as long as war is going on, of course, they cannot but be the one team. However, at the same time, I do see some residuals or potentials for those kind of, again, the conflicts between the two as well. So let me just highlight that specific point first. And China's role, of course, many, I think, in the world, including myself, many people want the end of war as soon as possible. So many innocent civilians are victimized by this massive, again, the war. So definitely, at some point, the war should be ended, again, as soon as possible. However, China's role, of course, China has a certain leverage, I think, vis-a-vis Russia for now, because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. They do have, again, the economic ties or many other political reasons. China can have certain leverages, again, on the Russia, but I'm a little doubtful about how much, again, the China can have the leverage over the Ukraine as well. So my point is, probably if China really wants to practice some constructive role to end this war, again, I personally do think China needs to talk with the United States as well.
So China and Russia, they're on the same team now, but their friendship may not last forever, especially with the two both being nuclear powers. But at least for now, it looks like China is a major supplier to Russia that's fueling the war in Ukraine, which leads us to our next question. Dr. Revere, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, during his visit to Beijing at the end of last month, warned China that Washington will take action if China does not stop supplying critical items to Russia. But it remains unclear as to whether China will listen. What are your thoughts, and what further action is expected from the U.S.?
I think Secretary Blinken's message to President Xi last month was very clear and very forceful. And the message was, if you don't stop helping Russia's war against Ukraine and its attempt to undermine European security, we, the United States, will act in response. I think Beijing understands exactly what that means. The United States has already taken steps against a number of Chinese entities that have been providing Russia with some critical technology and some dual-use components that have been a factor in Russia's effort against Ukraine. I think Secretary Blinken, in his conversation with Xi Jinping, was suggesting that this was only the beginning of what the United States would be prepared to do. So I think the focus going forward on the part of the United States will be the possibility of applying broader and more biting sanctions and export controls on Russia. And with luck, that will get Beijing's attention.
And growing Russia-China military ties is another point of concern. The two countries have strengthened military cooperation during the war in Ukraine and also expanded their joint naval drills near Taiwan. Dr. Revere, how big of a threat is this to the U.S. and the world?
Russia and China each individually are acting against the interests of NATO, the United States, Europe, numerous countries in Asia, and several of America's key alliances. Russia and China have the ability to engage in even bigger mischief if they begin to pool their military and intelligence resources, for example. Going back to where I started in this conversation, the implications of the Putin-Xi summit are that this may well be what Russia and China have in mind. The two countries see themselves as being aligned in opposition to the current international order and are eager to replace it with one that they would lead. That is a major threat that the United States, its allies, and international partners need to take very seriously. And as I said at the outset, the just concluded summit is indeed a wake-up call for all of us.
Professor Lim, Putin and Xi, while blaming everything on the U.S., urged the country to stop intimidating North Korea militarily and halt provocations against the North. Do you anticipate a closer alignment between China, Russia, and North Korea going forward? And how do you see the chances of President Putin making a surprise visit to Pyongyang after concluding his trip to China?
Well, I cannot be that sure whether, again, the President Putin can make another foreign visit to Pyongyang or to some part of the North Korea, because, of course, you know, even among American experts, there is a certain concern that Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, these four countries are now cooperating further and further, which is definitely undermining the stability, not only in the Middle East and in Europe. Those kind of, again, alignment among the countries can, of course, shake the peace and stability in this region, too, or around the world. So certainly, which is worrisome for South Korea-like country as well. However, but at the same time, you know, as long as, you know, North Korea already just violated all this, you know, international rules, and they just, you know, withdrew themselves from the existing regime, which is trying to prevent further proliferation of nuclear weapons. And as long as, again, that they are the violator, and as long as South Korea is still trying to follow all these rules, again, to comply the rules. Again, I definitely do think, again, the rest of the world will just back up, again, the South Korea's, again, the voices. So having said that, probably China's position can be pretty different from the three countries, again, the Russia, Iran, and the North Korea. Again, China is a big country, giant-sized country. At the same time, it's a trading country, too. So as long as they need to trade with the rest of the world, I don't think China can be fully satisfied with this kind of, again, the categorization. So probably they might want to see, how would you say, another President Putin's visit, which can dilute the effects or benefits of the bilateral summit between the President Putin and President Xi. So again, I'm not 100% sure whether, again, the President Putin gonna make another visit to Pyongyang.
But China and Russia did put the world on notice that they have North Korea's back, and emboldened North Korea fired several short-range ballistic missiles just today, this afternoon, into the East Sea. While we're still waiting for confirmation on Putin's possible visit to Pyongyang, Dr. Lim, the South Korea-Japan-China summit is expected to be held here in Seoul at the end of this month. What should South Korea aim to gain from the summit amid deepening cooperation between China, Russia, and North Korea?
Certainly, I do. Of course, we do have many important agenda for regional peace and stability, or not only just regional peace and stability for the global purposes as well. But certainly, I want to emphasize again the importance of the goal, our common goal. We definitely want nuclear weapon-free Korean Peninsula. You know, as long as North Korea keeps threatening us or Japan or even the United States or any other countries with the nuclear weapons, again, the South Korea, even though I'm not one of them who strongly advocates self-armament with the nuclear weapons, but again, more and more South Korean citizens, they really are worried about this imbalanced situations, and they tend to show more supportive attitude for again, the nuclear armament, which can be really game changer, which gonna be undermining, again, the existing NPT, again, the global regime, which is trying to prevent further proliferation of nuclear weapons. So I don't want to see, again, India-Pakistan-like combination in this region. And I think many of us will agree with that kind of, again, argument. So as long as, again, this is a real, urgent, immediate threat, again, definitely the trilateral meeting should deal with this common goal. Again, the China cannot be happy with the two nuclear-armed Koreas in the region either. So definitely, again, we do have many other issues, climate change issues, or any other important issues. But I hope, again, the North Korea's nuclear problem should be discussed seriously and honestly among the three parties.
Well, a great deal of attention will be focused on the Korea-Japan-China Trilateral Summit, as it will come at a critical time, if materialized, that is, and we'll be watching developments very closely. Thank you, Dr. Lim and Dr. Revere, for your analysis. We appreciate it.
Thank you for.
And that does it for this edition of Within the Frame. Thank you for watching, and have a great weekend.